Hi guys, and welcome to this session with me. My name is Joseph Warungu. I am the managing editor of NTV and speaking to you from our newsroom here at Nation Center. So this is a session we hope that we can hold weekly at about this time every Friday, and the purpose really is to engage with you on matters media, matters news, what we've done, what we've covered, what you've liked, what you didn't like, ideas that you may have for us, etc. And as we go along, I will also be inviting from time to time some of my colleagues who work with me here at NTV to also share their views, and experiences, etc. So please keep your questions coming in on matters to do with broadcast news, television news, anchoring, reporting, whatever it is, the kind of stories we cover or we don't cover, complaints that you may have, compliments that you might have, and our team is listening and our team is watching. So it's really a session to engage with you completely without any bounds except the bounds of decency and our editorial guidelines, etc. So to kick off, I thought I would maybe just share a little bit about myself, because the whole purpose of this session is sharing experiences, real-life experiences about our journey through journalism, personal journeys through journalism, and how we got to where we are. So I'll start with me, and then take your questions as well and your comments. And I've already received a few questions from you, which I'll be happy to tackle over the next hour. So as I say, the name is Joseph Warungu, if you may not be familiar with it. I sit behind the scenes here at NTV, and anything that goes out on NTV News in English and Kiswahili is my responsibility. When it's very good, please compliment the team. When things are really bad, it's me you should look for. At Warungu is where you find me on Twitter, Joseph Warungu on Facebook. So my journey, briefly. I really had a great love for broadcasting, or for reporting, for storytelling, right from when I was in school, and it's something that I just didn't want to do anything else. Unfortunately, when I finished school, it was impossible to. At the time, there was only one station in operation, which was the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, KBC. At that time, it was called the Voice of Kenya. And it was the only station, radio, TV, that existed in this country. So you can imagine the thousands of people who had dreams of becoming journalists, broadcasters, anchors, and so on, had to fight through that one single door. It was impossible. And Kenya being what it is, there were also all those kind of sometimes underhand deals, depending on who you know, which relatives in high places that you know, to get yourself into it. So when I found it was a real struggle to get in, I did screen tests, I did voice tests, and I had done well, but was never called in for a proper interview. I had to look for another career, and so I went into teaching. So by profession, I'm a trained teacher. Taught Kiswahili and English in high school in Kericho, in Nyeri, in Kiambu, and in other places. And then eventually, I managed to get into KBC. And, I presented programs there and also read news on radio and TV. And then when KTN came along, we were the founders of KTN. That's many, many years ago. I worked there as a reporter and as an anchor as well. And then after 2 years at KTN, I applied to join the BBC when they advertised for a job. And I moved to London, where I spent, something like 20 years at the BBC. And by the time I left BBC, I decided to leave and come back home. I was the, head of the BBC's News and Current Affairs program, responsible for our key programs in Africa in English, Network Africa, our breakfast show, and also Focus on Africa. And then after leaving BBC, I came back home to Kenya as a media consultant and trainer. I have a big passion for teaching, for training, for mentoring, especially young journalists, simply because during my time in my early 20s, there were no real mentors and no proper mentorship schemes. You had to survive the hard way through mistakes and things like that. So I started off a program called Top Story, which still exists. This is a national mentorship program for young journalists. We've seen more than 200 people who've gone through this scheme, and we take the best of our students from 25 universities across Kenya, bring them together for a training boot camp, and then we, After that, we get them to do real stories under the mentorship of colleagues, experienced colleagues like John Alanamu, Janet Mbogwa, and many others, Dennis Okari as well. So that's my journey, and that has been broadcast on NTV over the last few months, every Monday at 7:30. It's now on a break because of Corona. So that's me in a nutshell. And then I was asked to come and join the Nation Media Group and NTV and help our journey towards full migration into the future of whatever journalism and TV journalism will look like. And so I've been here for the last year or so, helping this station to get to greater heights. That's me in a nutshell. Feel free to ask any questions. I think already have a couple here. I will attempt to answer them. Shoot me anything that you would like to ask. So this is Nina Oyuero. You don't say where you're contacting us from, but you're asking, is discrimination on colorism basis true for lady anchors? This is something I have heard. This is something that we do not practice here at NTV. To qualify to become a news anchor or indeed a reporter, it's purely on the basis of merit, your ability, your talents, and your skills. I have been on air as well here on NTV every now and then, and I am as dark and as black as they come. So color is not the basis for discrimination, not the color of your face, not the hair on your head, not how you dress, but simply can you communicate effectively, clearly, and have you got the right kind of training and skills to handle news bulletin and news products? That's what we look for. There may be places where they would prefer, I don't know, people with a lighter skin tone. I don't know about that, but I can assure you that at NTV, that is not the basis for what we do. And you can look at our screen just to, to prove what I'm saying. There's another one here from Emmanuel Ouma. Where do you draw the line, he asks, between objective reporting and the organization's position, which may be aligned to a particular direction? I think, thanks, Emmanuel, for this. And it's simple. We are very objective. We're led by one book, what we call here our Bible. That's the editorial guidelines. And our guidelines dictate what we can and cannot do. We're also bound by various other codes, including Media Council of Kenya for the practice of journalists, including the Communications Authority of Kenya in terms of the kind of content we put out. So there are various professional codes and practices that bind us. We do not let the interests of the organization get in the way of telling the truth. Our job is to be an independent voice, giving voice to ordinary people for their concerns, issues that they care about. That's who we are. We're also about holding power to account. That means we will go after people, not necessarily just politicians, but anyone who is within a position of power. It could be a chief, could be a religious leader, it could be a principal in a school who abuses their authority or power, discriminates, harasses people. We will be on that story. So the kind of stories, for example, you've seen us put out, investigations done by, for example, our special projects editor, Dennis Okari, these are public interest issues. The red alert, the white alert, the COVID millionaires. These are stories that some people may not touch, but we dare to go there because we feel it's in the public interest and it matters to this country. So we try to be as objective as we can. The other thing that we encourage, not just encourage, but make sure that our reporters do not do is to bring in their own personal, religious, cultural biases into their reporting. If you're a good, professional, trained journalist, then you know that there is a distinction between you, the person, and you, the communication expert who's been hired and given this position of responsibility on behalf of NTV. So we're very strict on that. And my job as an editor is to look out for those biases, to take up any complaints and issues that come up, to make sure that we act on them. And then this is from one more here from Emmanuel Wanjala. You say, by the looks of this gentleman, that's me, I think it's from the poster, here. He's not supposed to be a news anchor or in a news organization. He's supposed to be the managing director in a company or a director somewhere. I say amen to that. Wallahi, if you know of such a position, please hit me up. I'll share my number if there is such a position going. But no, I know that there are positions, such positions that I could occupy. Or maybe I should say, I do have a managing something. It's not managing director, it's managing, editor. So maybe I'm getting there. I wouldn't swap this career for anything else. I wouldn't go out making money. I would, I'm very happy to spend the rest of my time here because I love what I do. I love to interact with people, to hear their stories, to tell their stories. That's what I've done throughout my life here in Kenya and in many other African countries where I have worked. So Emmanuel, asante sana, but I would appreciate huo mshahara wa managing director. Hook me up, but if I can do it while I'm still here, that would be great. Another one here. So you spent 20 years at the BBC as the head of Current Affairs Africa. That's a great experience. It is indeed. I've picked up a lot, huge experiences, which I'll share over the next weeks as we go along. Some of the things I've gone through as a journalist, working in a foreign country, employed in the UK, etc. I'll be happy to bring all those on board. Ndubi Mutori, you say a station is bought by a politician. How then does that station remain objective in its coverage in matters regarding politics? That's a tough one. I know of stations where the owners, who are politicians, actually go on air. And in my book, that is naturally not the right thing to do. Are you a trained journalist? Have you been accredited by the Media Council of Kenya as a trained journalist to do that? The moment people actually sometimes underestimate the intelligence of viewers, listeners, and audiences in general. They will be able to pick out that you guys, you pretend to be this kind of a station, but we can see your biases. So sometimes the audiences will vote with their, with their eyes or with their ears. They'll just shut you out if you tend to go in that direction. These kind of stations may not last too long. Because audiences have, they have discernment and they can tell that you are not really objective and you're not really biased, you're not really following what the codes advise us to do. So it's a pity that there are people who do that. It's not to say that politicians cannot own radio and media stations. They do. But the clever ones, they stay behind the scenes and they let professionals do their job. Yes. Who's this? Jason, you say, mad respect, sir. Raman watching from India, good evening. Thank you, Raman. I hope you're keeping safe, and I'm really sorry about what's going on in that country. We pray for you guys. Another one here, stay blessed. Thank you for great work. That's Jason. Thank you very much, Jason, for that. And this is, you don't give me your name, but you say, I'm a journalism student. NTV usually runs a graduate trainee program. That's the Media Lab. When do you plan to open the program? Maybe let me answer question one. The next group of, or the next application process will begin soon. At the moment, it's restricted to people who, will eventually be absorbed by the Nation Media Group. We hope it can be opened up. But it's a program that covers people who may not necessarily have studied journalism, but have got a specialist skill in another discipline. You could be an architect, a lawyer, or something else, but really interested in media. So we take about 12 such students here in Kenya, another 4 or 5 in Uganda and Tanzania. We put them through a training program. I'm actually currently responsible for the Nation Media Lab training program. And they go through the Aga Khan Graduate School of Media and Communication. And then they get attachment at Nation here and in some of our other business outfits in Tanzania, including NTV Uganda. And then they're absorbed, and eventually, they get employment at NMG. The reason behind this is that beyond just people who are trained as journalists, we like to mix that with real-life expertise. So, for example, when you have a lawyer, maybe working on a legal brief, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as a journalist who has had to, maybe do some homework on legal matters. So it's to blend that kind of expertise so that you have someone who's an artist, given some journalistic skills, someone who's an engineer, and we do have them in-house. And it really enriches our reporting and gives it a lot more authority. So we'll let you know when that program is able to open up. We'll keep in touch with that. This is number 2. You say this is from Ndubi. How secure is the TV anchors in terms of security because of exposing some touching and shocking situations? Example, the Purity Mwambia story, etc. That's from, you're calling yourself Raila Mashinani. Is that the real deal, the real Raila? I don't know. So here's the thing. And maybe I'll use the example of Dennis Okari, who leads all our NTV, the major investigations. As you can see, Dennis does what he does, and he's still alive. We thank God so far. He's still with us, actually working here today. 2 things. These are people who go through specialized training for what they do. Secondly, a lot of their security comes from the work that they actually do. In other words, because the work is out there and because it has already gained traction from audiences and from ordinary Kenyans, that in itself gives them some kind of a cover. So we've had some scares from one of our reporters who does also some investigations here at NTV and used to be followed quite a bit at night, someone just trailing them with their cars. These are intimidation tactics. We look after them as an employer to make sure that they are safe. There are certain precautions we take when they're working on projects. But our biggest security is to ensure that whatever content we put out there is really factual, is true, it has been corroborated, and there is nobody who can, take us on. COVID millionaires, for example, we've had people who maybe have complained, but no one has come to dispute the facts that we put on the table. Same thing as the red alert. So we let our journalism be the key defense, but we also take a lot of precautions for people who are doing sensitive work. I cannot discuss the detail of this because they are meant to keep our reporters safe. So we ensure that they are safe. Maybe the only trouble that my friend Dennis reports he gets into, every time he walks into a supermarket to buy something, people rush. The guys who work in that supermarket just go into a panic. What has he spotted? What is he about to report on? And the man just wants to pick up a packet of sausages and, to take home. And they are sure, sasa hapa, kimeumana. Things like that. So everywhere they see him, they assume he's seen something. But apart from that, to my knowledge, he has not suffered any serious threat. And when we do, we have our own security mechanism that steps in to help the likes of Dennis. Okay, another one here from Emmanuel Omar again. Journalism is by far dynamic as time goes by. How has fake news infiltrated the mainstream media, and how can we distinguish the same? Thank you, Emmanuel. This is a headache, not just for us here, but for a lot of media practitioners. We get a lot of fake alerts. We get a lot of press releases, some purporting to come from government or from organizations. We had one the other day, actually, when a story came out that, for those of you who know the Waterfront Leisure Center in Nairobi, there was a very beautifully crafted advert that said that the place was up for sale for about, can't remember, that was 20 billion shillings. And it was sent to us amongst other organizations. We had a long debate internally, scrutinized it using various means that we do, and came to the conclusion that this thing is actually not fake. And true to us, by the next day, the actual managers and owners of Waterfront issued a statement to say that that was all very false. So it's really difficult we work in a sea of fake news. And for me, one of the biggest threats to journalism is fake news. Things can be made to look so authentic that unless you use specialized tools or specialized, personnel, it's really, really hard. And sometimes we get it wrong. There are stories which are planted, which are not true. And you may try very hard. Our rule is that each story must be corroborated by, at least 2 independent sources. We like to go for real authorities. Has this really come from government? Let's give the CS a call, or the CS, or whatever it is, as close as possible to the real source of the story. But you can never guarantee anything. Even international organizations get caught out with the fake business. Another one here from Anthony Njage. You say, great work, my senior and teacher. Thank you, Njage. Wow, you remember you from my days, in school. Thank you very much indeed. What else is here? Now, NMG launched the Digital Transformation Journey. What's the future of broadcast journalism in reference to this digital journey? What are some of the digital products you're launching for broadcast journalism? For this one, I think my quick answer is watch this space. We've rolled out nation.africa, which is out there. We've started off with the with the print aspects of it, the text aspect of it, photography, some video. And the next step is to fully incorporate video in this process. So we've got plans, and not just plans for Kenya. It's called Nation.Africa because we intend to be, and we are, the media of Africa for Africa. That's our ambition. So this is the tool and the main platform that we want to be using for that. So it's still work in progress, and you can expect to see a lot more in the next few weeks, actually. So it'll be fully multimedia, interactive, and we'll cover not just content from Kenya, but from around the region and from the African continent as well. So thank you. Keep your comments coming in. Let me see if I've skipped anyone who's... I think I've handled what has been given to me so far. So that's where we are. Keep asking your questions. We're here to answer them. Also, things that you've seen us put out on our news that you liked or didn't like, I would like to hear from that. Now, Anthony reminds me of, what's the connection between teaching and journalism? You'd be surprised to hear the number of people who are in media who are actually former teachers. It's a very natural transition, especially, for example, either if you're doing the arts, or if you're studying languages, for example, English or Kiswahili or literature, it's a very easy way to transition to journalism, because one of the key things, as you might probably know, that you need to be able to become an effective communicator on radio and TV is language. So if you've got that as a teacher, I think that's maybe part of the battle that you've won. So it was a very easy transition for me as well. And some people just focus on English. I would say that I owe what I am and where I am right now, not to English, but to Kiswahili. When I was recruited by the BBC that many years ago, it was to join the BBC as a producer and, as a presenter of their news and current affairs programs. The BBC Swahili service. So never neglect Kiswahili. There is a lot of room. Swahili journalism over the years has grown. Sometimes some of the Kiswahili 7 p.m. bulletins perform better than maybe their counterparts in English. So it's a language that is really good if you've mastered it, and if you're good at it. I would encourage you to go for. I think someone also asked me, what does it take to make a good anchor? I don't know how to answer this, but I'll be truthful. To be a good anchor on radio or on television, the core skills that we look for is the ability to write. For me, is number one. Can you write well? Can you write clearly? Can you communicate effectively? And then the second one is the ability to speak, and to speak clearly. And people sometimes ask me, what about if you have issues of mother tongue interference? And for that, I would say, as long as the interference is not so bad that it gets in the way of communication, then it's not a problem. You have people who have accents. As long as your viewer and your audience can understand you, can follow what you're saying, in my book, that's good to go. And then the other one is the ability to interview, and to interview well. So there are people who have a natural skill of putting people at ease, getting them to relax, and getting them to share their story. That's what we look for in a good anchor. Some people ask, what about looks? It helps, but it's not the main qualification. If you look at what goes on across the global media, there are very different types of people with very different types of looks who present news. It is, have you got presence on screen? When we see you, do you command attention? Do people believe what what you say or what you communicate? So the ability to write, the ability to speak well, the ability to interview, and then the other one is you must be someone who can interact with people and is able to easily get along with people. I have come across journalists in my life who do not like people, and the journalists. Our work is about talking to people, listening to people, putting out people's stories, not your own story. So you must have that love for people. I was for about 4 years. I used to teach at the University of Nairobi School of Journalism, and I was teaching a course for final year students on broadcast journalism. And for every new class, my question is, why do you want to become a journalist or a presenter, an anchor or a reporter? And I don't know, 70%, or maybe I'm exaggerating, more than half the people say, because I want to be on TV. For me, that's not a ground for you to go into journalism. Being on TV is not a qualification for wanting to be, to get into journalism. It is people who say, I want to tell stories. I care about society. I care about the issues that affect people I interact with. I am concerned about issues of injustice in society. So you're burning to tell a story. You're burning to travel to places and hear people out and highlight issues that will bring a change and make a difference in society. Those, for me, are the people who make, the better journalists. And then, to conclude that bit about presenters and anchors, because you're a communicator, when you're on screen, this is something that someone was asking me, or a question I even get asked a lot, how should you look? We're looking for authority. When you stand up in front of the camera, just as I am now, have you got that confidence? Or do you fall apart the moment your camera shakes, your sound goes off? So confidence is a key thing. I talked about the ability to communicate. And then the other one, sometimes people put their looks, their mode of dressing ahead of the communication. The rule for me, for anchors who go on air, is that if there is anything that you're doing or saying or wearing that removes the attention of people from what you are saying, what you're communicating, then you have failed. So if you've come on screen with fantastic hair, and that's all we can see, we're seeing your hair that looks, it's so wavy, curly, and it's hair such as has never been seen on the continent of Africa. We will tell you, whoa, you look totally amazing, but you are failing in your job. It's not about your hair, it's not about your dress, it's about the content. And I learned this the hard way. That's why I never really, I am very strong on this. During my early days, when I started off presenting on TV on KBC, I had just started off, and I always were in the habit of, guys would compliment you because they've seen you on screen, and they would ask you, hey, you look great yesterday, etc. So you get used to this kind of very positive comments, which really, they fatten your ego. And ego is really dangerous to have when you're a communicator. And I remember this incident, which I've written about in some of my blogs, where I was seated in the KBC canteen in my early days as a presenter and having lunch. And then I was asking my colleagues, my friends, hey, so how did I look last night? And seated on the table next to us was this old school editor, Akamze, who's just having his rice and matumbo and, really absorbed in his meal. He listened to us, and guys said, no, you look amazing, man. You had a great jacket. Wow, yeah, there was a way. Yeah, you look good. And obviously my head was swelling and swelling as I was saying all these things. Then halfway through this, the old man, and he just pushed his plate of rice and turned to me and said, young man, listen, news is not about you. News is about what you're reading. And without saying hello or goodbye, he continued eating and moved off. That lesson has stayed with me all my life. That it is not about how you look, it is not about how you sound, it is when I watch you, are you getting in the way of me understanding what it is that you're presenting? It's about your ability to communicate. These are the things are add-ons. Obviously, we don't want you looking like we've just picked you up from the streets of Nairobi as, you know, as a homeless kid and looking all tattered. You must respect your audiences and therefore look fairly presentable. But it's really the ability to communicate and not let your ego get in the way. I would say I've survived this business because I don't have an ego. It's a job like anyone else. We have celebrity surgeons, and I don't know of any journalist who's been able to operate somebody and save their lives. No, there are people who do amazing things better than we do. So what makes you feel so special when you're on that screen that you are a semi-god? It is a very privileged position that you've been put into where you have millions and millions of people watching you, so use it responsibly. Sorry if I may sound like a teacher here, but it really rubs me the wrong way when we get it twisted in terms of what this career is all about. This is from, yeah, quite a few have come in as we spoke. Now, this is from watching from Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you very much indeed. How's Georgia? This is Steve. Thank you, Steve. Very informative, gives an insight to us consumers. Keep it up. Thank you so much, Steve, for that. Eric Wasonga, why they don't want to give someone's contact when they highlight their story. I'm not too sure I get you. But if you're asking when we interview somebody why we don't share their contacts or maybe they need help, it's for privacy reasons. If you do want to get in touch with someone that we featured on our news, we prefer that you call us. And when you do, we quite often will put you in touch with that person. So, that's why we don't share those contacts openly. And then someone else here who says, you are indeed a blessing to many of us. The biggest challenge that we have is misinformation and disinformation. Everyone is a journalist by their own right. Much needs to be done, especially to train us, for them to be able to train professionals. That's from Chebo. I fully agree with you. Misinformation and disinformation are the big things that we fight. And then another one here from Fidel. How do you balance news from 47 counties in a single bulletin? How do you determine which story gets life and which one dies? Now, unfortunately, this is where the editor plays God. You have the whole country to cover. Who will live and who will die? We have certain merits that we use to judge whether a story should be put on air. And the key one is public interest. This is a matter of public interest. People need to know this. So we have to juggle that and decide. Sometimes stories are very dramatic, that they may not be very strong, but because of the kind of pictures that they have, we put them on air. So we have certain principles for, obviously, people who went to journalism schools of what makes news. There is proximity, there is prominence. Things which are closer to you mean a lot more to you. That's why we always start with Kenyan news and not news from Rwanda or Zimbabwe, because that's too remote for you. So things that matter to you are close to you. Things that affect your life, your education, your health, your children, you would want to know about them. Things about your own safety. So these are the considerations that we make. But we also try to keep a balance. We say, hey, we haven't heard from, I don't know, from Kakamega in a long while. So it's time to, find something about that. So there's a lot that goes in it. And we usually have editors who sit around and say, guys, what are we leading in? And which story will not make it tonight? The story that is taken off because maybe we don't have enough space, it's for tomorrow, usually will be the one that may not appeal to so many people, is not too urgent for that day, can be covered in another day. So, guys, thank you so much for your questions. As I say, this is the first of many sessions. So keep an appointment with us every Friday at 4 p.m. East African time. We'll be here. I'll be here. Also, occasionally joined by my colleagues who are on-air talent and our producers and camera people to share what we do and how we do it. Hope it's been useful. My name is Joseph Warungu. Feel free to get in touch with me at Warungu or via our social media on NTV, and we'll be happy to respond to you. Thank you again for your time. And hey, see you next Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe.